I mean, Jason, let's make it real quick.
Yeah.
If we were playing basketball, and I was you know what? This shot right here behind this line's worth 3 points. And then I start making 3 or 4 of them. And then you're like, you know what? I don't like those rules.
No.
Let's make them worth 1.
Yeah.
Let's make them worth 1 now.
Right.
Well, nobody would do that.
Hey, everyone. I'm Jason Harper for Queen City News Plus with Order in the Court.
And I'm Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes.
All right. I'm excited to be with you, Khalif, today because this is a big deal. A federal judge ruling that Justice Allison Riggs is almost the official winner for the state Supreme Court seat over let's see, we've got Justice Jefferson Griffin right there. Now, this is a big deal because North Carolina, Khalif, is still the only state in the United States that has not figured out who is going to take the Supreme Court seat 6 months later.
6 months seems to be a long time for some, but not for many. I can tell you this. It's taken 6 months because this case has touched every courtroom. Let me walk folks through the process. It started with the State Board of Elections. They go there, and Griffin's team wanted to get rid of a number of votes. 60,000 was one of the numbers they were throwing out there. It went from there to Wake County because you would think that's the place it's supposed to go. State court. Nope, not so fast. Riggs' team says, we don't want this case to be dealt with in state court. We want it to go to federal court because that's who's supposed to determine these types of issues. We'll take it to federal court. Federal court listens to this case and they say, yeah, you can hear it in federal court, but this isn't the best place for it to be heard. It needs to be heard in state court. Kick it back to state court. It goes through the gamut in state court. We go in state court. We go to the Court of Appeals, and we go to the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court all ruled in Griffin's favor. What does Riggs say? Well, thank you so much. Hold your decision. I'm going to go back to federal court where I started it. And that's where you have this U.S. District Court in federal court saying, all of you guys got it wrong. You wasted 6 months. This is what we probably could have came up with 6 months ago, and here is the decision. But that's normal. I got to tip my hat to the lawyers.
Yep.
Yeah, there were a lot of billable fees. There were a lot of attorneys getting paid in this process. But make no mistake about it. The legal process is a master game of chess, and these folks were playing it on the highest level. They preserved a number of appeals. They made sure they did what they were supposed to do. So when the case was ripe for coming back to federal court, you didn't waste an opportunity. They were striking. I mean, the court even says once it got done in Supreme Court, it says Riggs and her team came here at night to file this appeal and this request to the U.S. District Court. And so everything is happening like it's supposed to. And I love to watch legal process unfold when folks are doing it right. You see all these stories of attorneys doing misconduct, taking money from clients, forgetting timely filing something. But when folks are doing it at this high level, you're expecting them to get it right. And even if the decision doesn't go the way you want at least ensure that your attorneys are doing. These attorneys are like the highest of the height of the practice.
This has been, as you and I were saying earlier, this has been like a legal Wimbledon tennis match. It has been unbelievable, even just trying to keep up with where it's going now. And what's interesting, so Justice Allison Riggs is saying, hey, this is a victory for me that I won, but not so fast because there's a 7-day stay for this order, which means there's still a chance that Griffin can appeal this if he wants? I mean, it's not 100% over yet?
100%. That it's not 100% over. So a judge, when they put a stay, they're saying, I'm going to tell you what my order is. This is my order, but before my order becomes effective, right? Think of it like a law. They may have passed the law in January, but doesn't come effective until December. So we got to wait a number of months before. This is the same thing this judge is saying because they looked at the tape. The judge can see the history that this case is ping-pong back and forth in a number of courts, and we know these folks are quick to appeal, so I'm going to give you time to appeal. If you want to appeal to the Fourth Circuit, you can go ahead and do that, Griffin, and if you want to do that, I'll allow you that 7 days. You don't need 7 days. You can determine today if you want to appeal it, and now I'll give you that time. But then after that 7 days, this is what has to happen. And what are some of the things that have to happen? The judge says that, first of all, you can't retroactively invalidate absentee ballots cast by overseas military or civilians because that violates the substantial due process. You can't cure the process by violating the protective rights of these military guys, and lack of any notice and opportunity is a problem. So that was what the judge ordered in their ruling, and they're saying, before we allow this to take place, before we tell these states that they can't go and do what the Supreme Court basically told them to do last week, which was go back out and mail these guys an opportunity to cure their votes. They don't have 30 days to cure, and if not, now their votes won't count. That's what the Court of Appeals and that's what the Supreme Court of North Carolina said. This judge said, wait, hold on 1 second. That doesn't make any sense. You're telling these folks that have already voted then now retroactively, as the judge said, after the game is already over, we're changing the rules on it.
This is is there ever a case that you're aware of where a court has 6 months or long after an election or something where they've retroactively gone, okay, we're gonna change the rules? I mean, that's what they're wanting to happen here.
I've never seen it retroactively. What I have seen is courts where they will make guidance going forward. Going forward, if you want IDs to happen, photo IDs like in this case, and you want these folks that are living in other countries to not be able to vote and they have to have identification, then that's something that's going to go forward. But there's a mixture of things that are happening. We got to look at what Griffin was challenging first. Griffin challenged approximately 60,000 voters because they didn't have a license number or a social security number. Right. Additionally, he challenged the overseas voters who cast absentee ballots. And the third thing he challenged was these overseas never residents. These folks have never lived in the state of North Carolina. And you would think, oh, that's a major problem. If you've never lived in our state, you shouldn't be able to vote. Well, they've been doing that for the last 40 years. This isn't anything new. The only thing that threw a wrench in this whole situation was the voter ID law, passed in 2013, implemented in 2018-ish, right, after a number of challenges. And the issue there is the State Board of Elections carved out a specific section for these voters that Griffin's trying to get to. They're saying, well, even if you wanted it to be to these voters, we've already said we're not saying they have to have ID. So the judge is saying your argument is tossed out because of already precedent that's there. To your question, I think that this is something that would be historic, an historic violation of these voters' rights to say 60,000 folks that already voted. I know you voted in all these other elections, in all these other races. You may have voted 20 other times before, but for this specific seat, for this specific election, they voted for other people. They didn't just vote for judge. But for this specific seat, seat 6, your vote doesn't count. We're going to throw it out because you didn't come back. The precedent that would set would be historic. I mean, and it just would not be North Carolina. This would be other folks watching this and saying, what the heck is happening?
You know, it's interesting that you say that because had he won this challenge, do you see that leading to more candidates down the road moving to change election rules long after a race is over? I mean, that could have set a precedent, like you're saying.
I think they can try, but I mean, this was the perfect scenario. First of all, when you're going for a Supreme Court of the state, you're talking about folks that have resources. So you got to have resources. Then you got to have a court or courts, I should say, that are open to hearing that. And He luckily ran into a panel at the North Carolina Court of Appeals, 2 Republican judges, one Democratic judge, and they were open to hearing the argument. Then he kicks it up to the North Carolina Supreme Court. They were open to hearing the argument. So I think timing and resources were kind of what happened in this situation. I mean, but it really doesn't change the dynamic anyway. I mean, the Democrats are going to be outnumbered on the Supreme Court in North Carolina handedly. So with a win or a loss, it doesn't change the dynamic. But I think he had the resources to fight this one. I think he'll still have the resources to fight. He wants to fight to the Court of Appeals. I think he could. Do I think the Supreme Court of the United States takes this up? I'm not sure. This isn't one that's really ripe for that type of call. Right. Normally, they want to hear ones that are constitutional questions. They want to hear ones that have different U.S. court jurisdictions that are giving different rulings. We don't have that here. We have one U.S. district court that's made a decision. We may have a court of appeal that goes a different way, but I don't think that would be enough to kick it to the Supreme Court of the United States. I don't see that happening.
I do want to mention, because I guess you can't officially say that Justice Allison Riggs has won yet if the stay is still going on. Now, she did come out with an interesting post. This was the post that she made. It says, this is from Allison Riggs online. It says, "Today we won. I'm proud to continue upholding the Constitution and the rule of law as North Carolina's Supreme Court Justice." Even Governor Josh Stein said, we must certify. Basically, let's be done with this already. We're the last state, right? There's one state standing, and it's North Carolina. So, I mean, can her camp say we won?
I'd say probably not. If I'm advising them, you want to say that politically, right?
Okay.
Like if you're doing the politics game and you're trying to get Democrats hyped up about a win, then yes, it sounds good to say she won. But she hasn't won yet because the order's not even effective yet for 7 days. But I even say after that, I would pause and pump the brakes because you got to remember when the Court of Appeals, that's the North Carolina Court of Appeals, ruled in Griffin's favor, his team was saying the same thing. Riggs loses, Griffin wins. I mean, so until we get a final ruling, and final in my mind would be these 7 days have passed and they haven't appealed it, then I think there's nothing a win or loss yet because most of this stuff is still up for grabs because another judge or a panel of judges with the Court of Appeals can look at these facts and say, I don't buy the argument that the U.S. District Court judge ruled. But I will add this. folks that are out there that like the legalese, that like looking at court opinions. That panel that did it for the Court of Appeals in North Carolina, 3-judge panel, 2 of them ruled in favor of Griffin. The one judge, Judge Hampton, ruled against Griffin and ruled in favor of Riggs. You know, the majority decision was like 20 pages. His dissent was 66 pages. He had 66 pages of dissent because he was that frustrated by how the court ruled. So then look at this U.S. court judge's ruling, 68 pages. And most of it mirrored Hampton's reasoning. Most of it mirrored what he said was that even if I don't like the way the decision went, you can't just unjustly and unduly, without due process, remove the rights of voters without giving them notice, an opportunity to be heard, and telling them the rules before the game started. I mean, Jason, let's make it real quick.
Yeah.
If we were playing basketball and I was like, you know what, that this shot right here behind this line's worth 3 points. And then I start making 3 or 4 of them. And then you're like, you know what? I don't like those rules.
No,
let's make them worth one.
Yeah,
let's make them worth one now.
Right.
Well, nobody would do that. And so if we take it outside the concept of legal and just make it real life basic, it makes sense that after the game has started and after the game has completed, because even my scenario is off base. This scenario is saying the game is over. The Warriors won. Steph Curry made 40 points. Yeah, we went back and looked at the books. He only had 20 because those threes aren't worth great.
Yeah, because they're not 3-pointers.
That's what they were trying to get to have happen here. And I don't think anyone would want to do that in that scenario. And this is what Riggs' team is saying that we shouldn't do here. And I buy the argument. I just think that because they had notice, like you had 7 months before the election. If you wanted folks to have voter IDs, you could have challenged it then for these specific group of people. Griffin's team didn't. So now when I talk about good lawyering, somebody dropped the ball. Someone should have said, hey, these folks are out here, and we think that this is a margin that can affect us later in the election. We probably want to raise this issue now with the Board of Elections, preserve it. So then if the court would have said, why didn't you guys raise this argument? We could say, no, we did. And they didn't buy it.
Right.
I think we'd be having another discussion then. If they would have raised this at 7 months ago before the election, and they would have said, you know what? This isn't right. These folks should be required to get IDs. They should have a driver's license, a social security number. Why aren't you guys requiring them to do that?
This would have been a whole different conversation.
100%. I'm with Griffin's camp.
Right.
If they're saying that they made an argument prior to, and the State Board of Elections said kick them to the curb and ignored them, every challenge after that, I think you'd have to rule in Griffin's favor because they've raised the argument. Failure to raise the argument now, I think they've lost that opportunity.
If Griffin doesn't appeal, and if this stay expires, Justice Allison Riggs officially becomes the justice again on the seat. Has there been cases? Have there been files that have just been going slowly through the court, basically on pause for the last 6 months? I mean, is this going to finally put things back on track now that the Supreme Court seats are going to be finally full?
I think having a full seat, right, having all the justices on the bench allows it to become and move effectively. But they haven't stopped working. This isn't like a one-person shop where now, okay, this is the only justice that can hear these cases. No, I mean, because think about it. Our actual Supreme Court heard this case. And so it didn't stop it. I mean, they've heard a number of cases, some of the things that have been involved with not just this case, but other cases with death penalty, with abortion, with things like that, have went before this Supreme Court, and they haven't missed a step. And so while I do think this is a long time, historically long.
6 months to the day.
For a race to be decided, this is long. But I think oftentimes we say the wheels of justice run slowly, right?
Yeah.
This is one where it needed to go slow. You don't want a fast decision where you're talking about folks' rights to vote being either potentially removed or over. So for sure, like that.
There we go. We will see where it goes. I feel like we need a gavel. Court dismissed. Is that how we end, Khalif? I like it. All right, listen, thanks for joining us on Order in the Court, along with Khalif Rhodes and Jason Harper for Queen City News Plus.
If you enjoy watching this content, please download and watch our full series of Queen City News Plus originals on our app. You can find Queen City News Plus using your streaming devices, including Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and Apple TV. Just search the name Queen City News Plus. Your support will help us to continue our series. Thanks for watching.